there is so much stuff. I have literally this whole room just filled with things in here. All of this stuff has to be organized. I'm gonna try and make this look really unflattering. Ready? There. So this is my room, this is my office, and today I'm gonna try and re-renovate, re-stylize this basement into sort of like a YouTube studio or just sort of workshop, just a spot for me to have all of my gear as well as just a spot to shoot. And for those of you who are working in your house or wanting to build like a YouTube studio, I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna build whatever I have whatever I have going on down here, and how I've been able to assemble this kind of cool backdrop with some lighting. And I don't know, it's like one of those like home reno type episodes. Also, just so you guys know, that stop motion at the beginning where like all the furniture was moving out, that was totally my dad's idea. It took a lot longer than it looks. I'm gonna play it again just because it turned out really cool. It looked awesome. Organized C-stands, check. I'm so excited to share this with you. The space is done. I'm really pumped with how it looks, and I know this just looks like some regular old room and not that interesting, but there's a couple cool things that we've done to make it work perfectly as sort of a studio, as well as just like a functional space. Like, that's what I really dig about this. It's functional, it's a cool space, but this lighting looks awful, so cue cool lighting and cinematic sequence. I'm really, really happy with how this looks. So basically over here, I have my my gear, and that's where I'm gonna be storing it. And so this acts as like functional, but also acts really well as backdrop. And then over here, I've got another backdrop, and I just really like I like the map, and it looks good. And then if we go over here, this is probably one of my favorite spots, which is this backdrop. Check this out. I have this sort of all black backdrop, although I had to do some cropping on the sides because it's not big enough, but that will come. So that's basically it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thanks for tuning in. And I want to just give you a couple pointers and some words of advice about setting up your studio. For the longest time, I didn't make videos because I was like, I gotta have the perfect background. I gotta have all this stuff all set up and ready. But the big thing is, like, you don't need to have all of that available. And as soon as you get that out of your system, you can just start shooting. Like, trace back to my earlier videos, and I'll add a couple in the description below. They started just shooting using natural window light. And I just used my, like, I think my 16 to 18 to 105 Canon lens, and it wasn't anything fancy. And then as I started making more and more videos, the quality started to graduate, and so did the content that I was making. But I put content first, like always put content first, and then quality will soon become parallel. When you make a movie, you don't buy the camera first, you write the script first. And the same goes with this. Come up with the ideas, let the ideas come out, and the quality will soon accumulate. Your content, your ideas come first, because if you're focusing on like all of this stuff, like this camera took me like 5 minutes to set up. So while I'm setting that up, I'm like losing fuel about what I'm gonna talk about. So have your ideas first, shoot that first. If you need to, use a window light. If you can afford it, start picking up some gear. I'll add a link to a tutorial on how I sort of shoot these videos in the description below. I also just picked up this light, the Falcon Eye. There will be a link to it in the description below. I am loving it. It's such a gem. I'll probably do another video about it later, but it is like super helpful setting all this stuff up. But at the end of the day, I have set up this sort of zone of me filming so that I have creativity more accessible. Like, accessibility is way more important than like the quality of what it looks like. Like, yes, I've got something going on. I mean, I'm sure this is driving you OCD people crazy. But outside of that, like, I mean, I've got 3 walls that I can shoot at, so it's kind of like a setup, like a studio. I can shoot at this wall, that wall, that wall, and then I can shoot a little bit of wide, and then I can shoot like even wider. So like from first glance, I have 5 angles to shoot from. But beyond that, what I like about it is my gear is right here. So if I need to like shoot something, I have it right there. It's accessible. And for me personally, accessibility accelerates creativity. So if I can see the stuff that I'm going to use for future projects and the stuff that I'm going to work on, I'll use it more often. You know, you go into the restaurants and they have the crayons on the table along with like the drawing like paper on the table already there. You'll probably start drawing and doodling. That's because it was there, it was accessible. But if you went into a restaurant that wasn't accessible, you're probably not going to ask the waitress for a pen and paper to draw on. That's because it was accessible. And I believe creativity plays along the same lines. If you see your gear, you'll use it more often. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the whole reason for this setup is so that I can see the gear that I want to use so that the ideas start rolling, and already they're already starting to go down. But the number one thing to remember is if you're starting out, look at things that are already there, already existing within your space, and let those ideas roll. If you don't have a setup, if you don't have a studio, if you don't have lights, a big fancy camera, look at your window, use natural window light, shoot outside, shoot outdoors until that stuff starts to accumulate and gets better. You can afford a couple more little things, but you don't need a lot of stuff to get started. If you're interested in learning a little bit about what gear to use or what gear I use for these talking videos, I'll add a link to a video in the description below where I sort of discuss about my sort of setup for these things. That's it. That's all, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to take a look at myself, my adventures in building stuff with my dad a little bit more, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. It would really mean a lot. Like it, share it to all your filmmaking friends. And again, I apologize for this sort of crazy head of hair, congested nose, and quick rambling. I've been sick for a couple days. I'm just getting over being sick. You're the first people I've talked to for a very long time, and I'm just overly excited and maybe a little eccentric. But that's it. That's all. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later, and have a good night or day or evening.